now live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Loughborough Area Committee on the 16th of December 2020. My name's Adrian Ward, the Council's Head of Strategic Support and Monitoring Officer, and because this is the first meeting of the committee in the civic year, I will deal with the introduction of the meeting until the committee elects a chair and vice chair, at which point I will hand over to the chair. There are a number of things I would like to remind people of before we start with the items on the agenda. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent and ensure that your environment is distraction free. And also, if you could please mute your microphones unless you're speaking. Can I remind everyone that this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. Thank you. As a reminder for members of the committee and also for the benefit of anybody observing, this is a consultative committee, so it deals with items that are brought before it that affect the town of Loughborough, and any responses that the committee wish to make should be collective responses rather than a list of individual councillors' views. But obviously councillors can make their own individual responses to any consultations that come before the committee if they wish to do so. As this is a virtual meeting, it will run slightly differently. Members will need to introduce themselves and state their name and confirm that they can hear and see proceedings. This is important for the purpose of recording attendance and the transparency of the meeting. I will do this shortly by taking an alphabetical roll call. Members will use the raised hand feature in the participant section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so in the queue system. So I'll start off by confirming those present. And as I call your names, if you could confirm that you're present and that you can see and hear the proceedings, please. Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Chair. I am present and I can hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Bradshaw.
Yes, I'm present and can hear and see proceedings.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. I'm present. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Campsall. I can't see Councillor Campsall, so I assume he's not present at the moment. Councillor Draycott.
Yes, I'm present and I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Adrian. I confirm that I am present and that I can both see and hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goddard.
Yeah, I can see and confirm that I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you. I can confirm I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Christine Harris.
Can you? I confirm that I'm here and I can hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Mear.
I can confirm and I can hear and see the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Good evening. I confirm that I can see and hear the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons.
Confirm I can see and hear the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parton.
Good evening. I can hear and see the meeting. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you. Councillor Smidovitz.
I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Tillotson.
Thank you. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. And Councillor Ward.
Yes, I can confirm that I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you all very much. So moving on to the other attendees, again, if you could confirm that you can all see and hear the proceedings when I read out your names. Councillor Boker, lead member for Loughborough.
Councillor Boker sent apologies, Adrian.
Okay, thank you. Simon Jackson, strategic director.
Thank you, Adrian. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Matt Bradford, head of cleansing and open spaces.
Thanks, Adrian. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Sylvia Wright, head of leisure and culture.
Thank you, Adrian. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Leslie Tansey, head of financial services.
Thank you, Adrian. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Tom Delaney, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Adrian. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sally Watson, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Adrian. I can see and hear. We've also got Head of Neighbourhood Services, Julie Robinson, in attendance as well.
Okay, Julie, can you confirm that you can see and hear the meeting?
Thanks, Adrian. I can confirm I can see and hear the meeting.
Thank you very much. So moving on to the agenda, item 1 is the appointment of a chair for the 2020-21 civic year. Are there any nominations for anybody to be the chair?
I would like to nominate Councillor Tillotson.
Is there a seconder for that, please?
I'd like to second that, please, Adrian.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Okay, so I propose that rather than, as we only have one nomination that's been seconded, that rather than doing a full named vote, I just ask anybody who wants to vote against or abstain to raise their hands now. Otherwise, we'll assume that the appointment is agreed. So
I'll abstain, Adrian, if that's all right.
Okay, so one abstention. So I can't see anybody indicating that they wish to vote against or abstain. So Councillor Tillotson has been appointed chair of the committee for 2020-21. Moving on to item 2, appointment of vice chair. Are there any nominations for somebody to be the vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Bolton, please.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
I'd like to second that nomination.
So that's proposed and seconded. Are there any other nominations for a vice chair of the committee? Can't see anybody raising a hand. So again, because there's only one nomination that's been seconded, if anybody wishes to abstain or vote against, could you please raise your hand now?
Adrian, I would like to abstain, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bolton. That's noted. Nobody else has raised their hand, so that's confirmed that Councillor Bolton has been appointed as the vice chair. So I'll now hand over to Councillor Tillotson as the incoming chair for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you for agreeing that I can be chair, everybody. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Have we got any apologies?
We have Councillor Tillotson. We've had apologies from Councillor Boker, as already stated. Also Councillor Bailey and Councillor Keith Harris.
Thank you. Moving on then to minutes of the previous meeting. Does everybody agree that the minutes of the previous meeting can be accepted as a correct record?
Agreed.
Right, no, nobody seems to be objecting, so can we accept without taking a roll call, Adrian? Is that all right? Thank you. Right, moving on then to item 5 on the agenda, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Does anybody have any disclosures to make? No, take that nobody has.
No,
oh,
yes.
sorry. Yeah, Councillor Mia, Do I see
Yeah,
anybody else?
just to say, we're going to look at the Loughborough special expenses. I'm appointed to Fair and Hall as an outside body. I think that might come up for discussion today, so I'm just going to declare an interest, non-prejudicial. Thank you.
Right. Has anybody else got any interest to declare?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, Councillor Christine Harris.
Yes, thank you. It's simply that I also am an allotment holder. So I suppose I ought to make a declaration. I hadn't thought about this in the past. Thank you.
And Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Tillotson. Yes, like Councillor Mear, I'm also a trustee at Gorse Covert Community Centre, so it's pertinent to the special expenses item.
Thank you. Is there anybody else before we move on? No, I can't see any more. Right, in that case, we'll move on to questions under committee procedure 12.8. There have been no questions submitted. I assume that's still the case. So
Yes,
move on. Yeah, so move on to item 7, Loughborough Special Expenses Draft Budget for 21-22.
It's Leslie Tansey, Head of Financial Services. Would you like me to introduce?
Volunteer.
It's Leslie Tansey, Head of Financial Services. Would you like me to introduce the item?
Yes, please. That will be wonderful.
Okay, so it's item 7, the Loughborough Special Expenses Draft Budget for 21-22. Item 1 on page 13, part B of the report, proposes an increase in the Loughborough rate of 1.99%, a band D rate of £77.98. This is the same increase as last year's increase, and it's in line with our draft budget that was reported to Cabinet on the 10th of December. The only anticipated change will be a small change in the council tax base. There are service savings and pressures itemised on this page. There's 2 pressures which relate to loss of income due to COVID pressures. These will be reviewed in the year and adjusted next year accordingly. Page 14, which is Appendix 1, summarises the individual budget lines that make up the Loughborough Special Expenses budget. As you can see, there is a small adjustment, £10,000 overspend from last year and a £5,000 adjustment to get the rate to 1.99%. Page 15 provides details of the differences year on year. If you have any specific questions on the related items, then we have our heads of service present to answer any specific questions. Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll open it up for questions now. Are people going to use the blue hand, or are we going to just stick our hands up?
Blue hands, Chair.
Blue hands, right. Let's have a look then. Right, can't see any at the minute. Oh yes, Councillor Parton seems to be the first hand to come up. So over to you, Ted.
Thank you very much. Could we talk about the fact that we didn't have Loughborough Fair this year? The money that is normally allocated to the fair, what's happening to that money? Is it being reabsorbed into the expenses for this year to provide extra money, or are you putting it to the costs of next year's fair, which of course, you know, I appreciate it's a big fair because it's 800 years, but what's exactly happening to that money? And the second question is, can you talk about CCTV? Because we've got a larger spend on CCTV, but we have the total number of cameras is reduced. So can you explain the mathematics around that, where 25% of total costs compared to 22%, an additional 3%? Could you go into detail on that, please?
I'm happy to answer the first question, Councillor Parton, around the fair. We've just done a period 7 monitoring on the Loughborough Special. We've got income losses across all the budget lines this year. What we're proposing to do on the proposed overspend on Loughborough Special this year is to actually balance that off from our COVID emergency fund. So there won't be any effect on the rate or the balances going forward into the next financial year.
So how much were we going to spend on Loughborough Fair this year? Please.
Sylvia Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture. Do you want me to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Sylvia.
Lovely, yeah. Basically, the fair, the budget for the fair is an income figure. So we normally bring in income of around 44,000. And so the total income is, that's the net. The total income is around 88,000, 89,000. So basically it's the difference between the two. So the cost, obviously the income is greater than the expenditure. I'm talking about the actual above the line costs here, not in terms of the under the line costs, but in terms of the costs that we can manage. Basically the income that we generate is greater than the expenditure, so we're missing the income this year, if that helps.
Okay. Chair, I apologise. I did actually mean to ask another question. May I ask it, please?
Yes, carry on, Ted.
Thank you. The last year we spent 48,400 on festive decorations and illuminations. It's proposed that we spend an extra £7,400. How would we justify that to the to our residents, to our Loughborough residents, given the financial difficulties we're going to be in collectively?
I'm quite happy to answer that. The fact that we've actually retained the rate at 1.99, we're obviously providing just the same service across all of the codes. If you can see, there's some ups and downs on all of the codes, but we're actually providing the same service at the same increased rate, if that helps. Sylvia, I don't know whether you've got any follow-up on that one.
Yes, I can come in there. We tender for a company to put the lights up and take them down each year, and the majority of that cost is relating to that. But there are other things included in there, like the Diwali lights and the hire of the rooms at Town Hall for Diwali. So under that festive light budget, it includes a contracted cost, which is consistent and is the same cost for each year. We will be going out to tender again next year for that, and obviously that will be that cost will be dependent on the market. But as Leslie said, it's the costs are consistent. It's just that it's basically more administration in relation to the delivery of the fair. That's an in-house cost rather than a contractual cost.
Is that all right, Ted, or have you got anything? Are you happy with that?
It was the question about the CCTV, Chair. Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that, Chair? Julie Robinson, Head of Neighbourhood Services.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Councillor Parton, there's an explanation in note 1 of the special expenses. The percentage split is based on the total number of cameras, and the total number of cameras overall is reduced, but the total number of cameras that are contained within the Loughborough special rate has stayed the same, which means there's an adjustment to the overall percentage.
So is this the appropriate meeting to ask what the reason is that we've reduced numbers of CCTV cameras, please?
I can answer that, Councillor Parton. The total number, we haven't reduced the total number of cameras. It's based on the number of cameras that we monitor. And one of the contracts, which contains 36 cameras, removed the contract at the point the calculation was taken.
I'm sorry, I don't quite follow what you're saying.
So in terms of the costs for the CCTV, it's based on the numbers of cameras monitored. And so one of the people that we monitored the cameras for, so effectively Caroline Court, who we used to monitor the cameras for, said they didn't want us to monitor their cameras anymore. So it removed 36 cameras from the overall calculation. And therefore it adjusted the percentage split.
Thank you. Shall we move on to the next now? The next person who had their hand up, I think, was Councillor Ward. Your hand seems to have gone down, but are you still wanting to ask a question?
I didn't take it down. I don't know what's happened
it
to
seems
it.
to have disappeared, but it was there. So if you want to ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask about the item on the special expenses budget about community grants and the £13,500 saving that's been found from that budget. I just wondered if you could clarify, if somebody could clarify where exactly that saving has been found in that budget, because Fearon Hall and Gorse Covert Community Centre are nominated in that section. I just wonder if that money is coming out of their strategic partnership grants, or where is that money coming from? Thank you.
I can answer that question, Chair, as Head of Neighbourhood Services. There's no reduction to either Fearon Hall or Gorse Covert. It's actually a reduction to the Loughborough grants budget.
Thank you. So which grants are going to be eliminated or are going to be reduced as part of that saving?
As part of the ongoing budget process, service reviews were undertaken by heads of service and options were put forward. And there's a proposal to reduce both community development engagement and Loughborough grants to 50,000 in total. So the saving has been prorated across Loughborough grants and community development engagement. And therefore, going forward, the proposal is that the grants are amalgamated and a new scheme will come forward.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, Emma, in terms of a response?
That's fine. Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
Next
Judy.
person was Councillor Brennan. Please, you want to ask your question, Councillor Brennan?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to ask about the quite considerable increase in support services recharges due to increased amounts of officer time. I've totted up 36.7 thousand over 9 separate items that are all cited to be more time being spent on that area. So is that because less time is being spent elsewhere? Is it because budgets have reduced elsewhere and more of the special expenses grant is being used to cover salaries? What's the reason for this? Because obviously that money might have otherwise been available to spend on services within the town.
Happy to answer that, if I may.
Yes, thank
you. There's just a couple of things on that. I think obviously the salary costs have increased from year to year, so there will be an increase on those recharge costs. In terms of the recharge costs, we're referring to the ones that have just gone up, or is that the net, the ones that have gone down as well?
Well, I can't actually see in the notes, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't actually see any specific support service recharges having gone down mentioned in the notes. And the ones that I've cited, the total that I've cited over 9 items, they're all, I've not included, for example, the 2% pay award on item 5, they're all cited as being due to more time being spent in this area.
I mean, if I could just answer, we do a detailed review at the end of each financial year for the heads of service that spend their time on those particular functions, so that there possibly is more time being spent on individual areas of Loughborough Special. But in terms of, I think, like I've said previously, that the actual rate remains the same as last year. So there are ups and downs in those budget lines, but I would say the support services are due to officers allocating more time to specific areas of Loughborough Special.
Thank you. I mean, I can see that that's what it says in the report, that it's due to increased time. Would it be possible for us to have a copy of that detailed review, please?
Yes, certainly.
That would be really helpful. And just my original question was: is there less time being allocated than to other projects? You know, which areas are not getting as much time, or is it because
I think that's something
that much money?
I think that's something, if you requested some sort of detail on where support service time is being spent, that's certainly something we could provide. As I say, there will be some ups and there will be some downs, but we can certainly get you that information that's behind those figures.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really important that we get some clarity on that, because, you know, I can only see ups and not downs. So that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. It'd be useful if you can share that with all the committee members.
Yeah, certainly.
Helpful. Thank you. Right, the next person with their hand up is Councillor Mia. So, Joel, if you want to ask your question.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to draw on some wording actually on Biggin Street toilets. Really, what we're proposing is to close it, but I think the term amalgamation with marketplace is used. So, are we closing it? Is that what that means? Is that why it's a zero figure? Can I have clarification on that first?
Sylvia Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture. Yes, I can respond to that. As Julia's already mentioned, heads of service were asked to kind of come up with savings right across their portfolios, and we looked at the whole of our services in order to put proposals forward. With the Biggin Street toilets, we've continued, well, basically income across the toilets has continued to decline, and we're kind of bringing in at least between 7,000 and 10,000 a year less income now, because people are looking to use cafes and other supermarket toilets and other places instead of the paid toilets. We've only got a finite resources in terms of staff, so basically the decision, the proposal was to close the Biggin Street toilet and then amalgamate the resources to make sure we can open the marketplace toilets, which is still very popular.
Chair, can I just come back on that one, if you don't mind? So originally, I think the toilets were open on market days, so the Thursday and the Saturday, and then we agreed in the Loughborough special rates to pay for the Friday to be open. So they were open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So in essence, this doesn't mean that it's just closed on Fridays. It means it's going to close per se. That's it. Is that still correct? Because that
yes, that is sorry. Yes, that is the proposal, to actually close the Biggin Street. I mean, it was basically based on the fact that obviously we have the marketplace toilets, which is well 270 yards away basically, and we thought it's better to make sure we can maintain a staffed toilet and put the resources to the Market Street toilets.
Right, Chair, just to come back on a statement here more than anything, I don't think the town centre is quite large, and I don't think it's prudent now to be closing the toilets. I think we have to support our marketplace and the people and the town centre and the people that visit it, especially at these times. But the saving is tiny, £4,500. And when you compare it, that we nearly spend £700,000 on parks and the Loughborough in Bloom and Gorse Covert and Booth Wood, to then get rid of a facility in the town centre, which many people will use and continue to use if it stays, and then it doesn't make sense. And I'd rather we spent maybe £4,500 less on a £700,000 plus budget in parks and keep the town centre toilets open, the Biggin Street toilet open, because I think there is demand there. If you're in the Rushes area, that's where the growing part of the retail footprint is of the town, and a lot of footfall is there. You know, it's a long way to go to marketplace if you need the toilet really quickly. And I don't buy this that the cafes are open and the toilet facilities are available, because they're not simply at this moment in time. Because if you go into a cafe now, you can only use takeout and you can't use any of their facilities, unfortunately, or most of them you can't. So I think this is the wrong time to be cutting this service, and if we're going to go to proposals later on, I'm just going to ask that we propose reconsidering that decision. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. The next person was Councillor Bradshaw. If you want to ask your question, Julie.
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. So obviously, because this is a consultative committee, I wanted to sort of bring this issue up here tonight in terms of consideration about the need for extra bus shelters. The reason I'm bringing it tonight is it's come to light over the last few months, and obviously with the horrific weather, the wind and the rain, many residents have actually been in touch with me as council about certain bus stops which don't have any shelters, as I'm sure you're probably aware. So, for example, on my ward, Loughborough Ashby, I can think of at least 2 places specifically on Sharpley Road where my community are actually getting chilled to the bone as they wait for the buses, some of which obviously arrive late. I do understand that the reason for the lack of the bus shelters on the estate is because of the number 5 bus route, which is a more recent addition to the old double-deckers. I also think that when the buses start going through, like, for example, new housing estates, such as, say, Shelthorpe and others, that there will even be more need for bus shelters. I believe, by the way, that places like Shepshed get bus shelters from the town council, like the other parishes. But however, we know that Loughborough isn't a parish. I've asked, and the common replies I get on what I see as an important matter, so from Leicestershire County Council as the Transport Authority, that they can only do it in exceptional circumstances, as like the Borough Council, they've got no statutory responsibility to install a new bus shelter, only just a budget for the maintenance of existing ones. So Charwood, I would say Charwood, acting as Loughborough's Parish Council, do have every capability of putting up bus shelters. It's demonstrated quite easily. If you look around the borough, you'll see many that have got actually the CBC logo on. They're easily identifiable. So my question tonight to the committee to sort of help me and help the borough with is about the definite need for bus stops in mind, and the fact that the LSR budget all seems to be allocated. I just wondered what you all thought, and it's just a question of how best to proceed with it, bearing in mind what I've just said to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradshaw. And we've got a couple of items already that we're looking for proposals, and that would be Councillor Mears' request that we retain Biggin Street toilets, and we've just had a request that we look for financial support for bus shelters. So I'd like us to come to those at the end, if possible, when we've heard everyone else's questions. So the next person who had a question was Councillor Goddard. So if you want to ask your question, Kat.
Thank you. Just at the bottom of page 16 at point 20, it talks about the number of street traders will be improved significant to meet the income targets, resulting the 10.8k service pressure one-off payment. And I was just wondering, obviously that is to do with COVID, but is that also taken into account the potential impact of a no-deal Brexit? Well, that will obviously affect supply chain for traders as well. And if not, is that likely to go up in the year?
If I could answer that, Sylvie Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture. Yes, I think what I would say, it's to do with COVID, the impact of COVID, and really basically the footfall is reduced probably by half within the town centre at the moment. And so basically it's not supporting. Some of the street traders are choosing not to trade and not to be present on the market because of the current footfall. Obviously it's a choice of the actual trader whether they trade or not, but it has affected that income line, and we have got traders that would normally be standing that aren't standing, and they're obviously waiting until the footfall increases. So it's purely on a COVID and the level of footfall within the town centre.
Thank you. Does that answer your question sufficiently, Kat? I'll take it if it does. Councillor Brennan, you put your hand up again. Have you got another question, or did your hand just not go down?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do have another question. Just coming back to the big in-street toilets, has there been an equalities impact assessment done and consideration given to the impact on people with disabilities of closing that toilet? And has the new disability champion been invited to comment?
I mean, if I can come out, it's Sylvie Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture. Basically, obviously, this is will be a cabinet proposal, but we're advised by the equality impact, the officer that does the equality impact assessments, that wasn't a requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons, you had your hand up. You want to ask your question?
Thank you. 3 points of clarification, if I may, please. On last year's papers, the council tax base was 16,466 to give us a special council tax of 7646. On this year's papers, the same year's figures, to get 7646, it looks like we've just adjusted the council tax base to get that number. Is that what we do?
To answer that, Councillor Parsons, at the moment, I think I said in my opening introduction that there will be some anticipated change with the council tax base. We've not actually had the council tax base figures out yet. We are due to get those out. I think all the parishes they've been released this week. So obviously that was too late in preparing this report. So there will be a council tax base change in the actual rate. So any adjustment will adjust the, if you can see the 15,000 adjustment, any adjustment to the council tax base will be adjusted within the 15,000 when we actually finalise the council tax base figures. We're not anticipating there to be any major changes, but that's what we've actually done for this draft report.
Okay. It just looks like we adjust the figure to get the number we wanted from last year. When you look at the bottom left, it looked like we just adjust the figure. Last year's figure was 16,466. This year's figure for the same year is now 16,621 to get the same 7646 in the bottom left now. So it looks like we've adjusted the
we
council
will.
tax base to get a number.
Yes, we have for this particular report, for the draft report, but we will, as I say, that because it's a draft budget at this moment, we will work on the actual tax base, the actual figure, sort of after really sort of this week, really, when we start preparing for the final for the final budget.
Okay,
But we are proposing. I think we are proposing. We are definitely proposing this 1.99% increase, and that's why we've had to adjust it for this particular report.
Okay. The scale of the adjustments from 1920 are significantly larger than any I remember seeing in previous years. If you look at the line that says adjustments from year 1920, can we just understand why the scale is so different than in previous years that I can see? So the 1819 adjustments were 14,000, 17,000. This year's 1920 scale adjustments are 215,000, 230,000. It's a factor of 10 bigger in the adjustments column.
I think the overall adjustment is 15,209 to actually get the bottom line to equate to the 1.99 increase on that tax base. So we are using 15,000 of our notional reserve, which is within. Obviously, when we do the Loughborough special year on year, we're bringing forward. I think, like I said in the introduction, we if you look at last year's outturn, we overspent 10,000. So we're obviously bringing that forward with this 15,000 adjustment.
It's when I look at something like the district capital charge, and last year the adjustment level was 17,000. This year the adjustment level is 230,000.
We don't actually include capital charges in the special rate at all.
Just looking at the papers, so I've got the column in front of me that says district capital charges. District/capital charges is the middle column for 2021.
Jeff, if it helps, I think you're reading the comments, adjustments from years, etc. That's not actually what the figures are on the right hand side. Those are just tallies for the columns, I think. Is that right, Leslie?
No.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So it's the 1769.
So what's the 215,410 underneath it?
Come back to that. I just have to double check those figures, Councillor Parsons, for you.
Hello?
Are you going to be able to answer that, Leslie?
I'll have to check with the officer and come back with those. I can certainly answer that we don't include capital charges at the 433. That's what we net down, and we adjust it by the 15,000. But I just need to double check what the 215,000 is and the 230,000.
That's a scale beyond. There are similar numbers last year as adjustments from 2018-19, and one is a negative 14,000, one is a cost of 17,896 last year. However, the scale this year is significantly larger, so it's substantially.
Certainly clarify that. I can certainly come back and clarify that one with you.
Right. So, on that basis that we're going to get clarification, are we happy to move on or not?
It's quite a big number. Quite a big number for clarification. 200,000. It's a big number. So if we're just ticking the box, it's a difference between 1.75.
I'll certainly come back to you, Councillor Parsons, on that, because obviously I don't want to say anything, and I obviously want to make sure that I give you the right answer.
Yeah, no, I get that. I understand it, Leslie. Completely understand that. I'm just saying that if we just move on as a committee and just say that's fine. It's a £200,000, 230,000 difference. It's a 10, 12, 14, 15% difference thing, a lump in the middle of that budget. So we can move on past it and say that's fine and just wait for explanation. But it is a big lump and it makes a big difference.
I wasn't suggesting that that was fine. I was just suggesting that if Leslie can't give us an answer, then if she can respond to everyone, not just to Councillor Parsons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on. The only other hand that I've got up now or had up was Councillor Draycott. So have you got another question, Councillor Draycott?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I ask a question about clarification on item 3? It refers to community hubs. Could you tell me which community hubs it's referring to, please?
Who's going to answer that?
Through you, Chair, I can answer community hubs. The community hubs included in that budget are Marius Tenenti Centre, Altogether Place, The Hut, Thorpe Acre Community Association, which has been put in the budget for a while, and community hub coordinator costs.
Can I come back then? So regarding Thorpe Acre, is that for the proposed new centre in Thorpe Acre or existing facilities?
It was always in the budget for the proposed new community hub if and when it got up and running.
Right. I mean, it's been there for a while. The likelihood is it's not going to happen next year, the way things are. If I remember right, that's about £5,000 or £6,000 that isn't going to get spent, that's in this budget, that could quite easily keep the toilets open and possibly help towards a bush shelter for Councillor Bradshaw. So when we come to the proposals, can we refer to that as well, Chair? Because I think that might be able to pay for a few things. And then the year after, 2022-23, it could possibly be reinstated. But that money will not be spent next year. It hasn't been spent for the last 2 years. So I'll leave that so we come to that at the end, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Draycott. I think that's a very pragmatic suggestion, if I might say. So if there are no more questions, then I suggest that we move now to proposals. And my summing up of this is that we want to propose retention of the Biggin Street toilets, which is £4,500.
Sorry, Chair, can we just have the blue hands down so we can start afresh, please?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't any blue hands that I can see now.
Councillor Parton?
Yeah, my hand is up because I want to make a proposal, please.
I apologise, Ted, I had not seen your hand. Right. Okay.
No, there's no need to apologise, Chair. It was to ask if I could make a proposal to go with the other two. So when convenient to you, Chair.
Right, if you want to make a proposal, then Ted, go ahead.
Okay, well, to assist in, it's my personal belief that I just don't think we should be increasing the amount we're spending on lights. There is an issue. I don't think this is personally that necessary, given that we're going to have the Bedford Square, Wharton and Devonshire Square renovations going to look absolutely superb. We don't need to spend as much on lights, and I would like to see a reduction in that figure, which will go to assist in other projects and or balancing the books further.
Thank you for that, Ted. I'm going to have to take advice now from Adrian, I think. How do we proceed with this? So we've got 3 proposals. Well, four.
I'd like to move something, Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'd like to move that and I think I'm right, it's either £5,000 or £6,000 that's in the Loughborough special rates allocated to Thorpe Acre, plus Ted, how much were you suggesting reduce from the festive decorations?
There's an extra spend proposed of £7,400, which isn't actually on lights; it's on the contractor cost.
Right. So if we say 7,000 from the lights be used instead to keep the Biggin street toilets opened, and for the bush shelter suggestion by Councillor Bradshaw be investigated, and then we could perhaps have an email from officers how that all stacks up, but I don't see any reason why that can't be done. So I'd like to move that formally, Chair.
Thank you. Do we need to take a vote on this, Adrian?
I think you need a seconder, Chair.
Yeah, yes, we would. Yeah.
I suggest, Chair, that you agree the exact form of wording that the Potter is proposing. You then get a seconder, and then it will need to be voted on.
Thank you. So we've got a proposal that we retain the Biggin Street toilets and that we look for financial support for bush shelters. And our proposal is that we use £7,000 from savings in lighting, and what was the other thing? And the Thorpe and the amount that Thorpe Acre Hub money to finance these items.
Before we come on to the actual seconding of that one, because I'm happy to second that one, I think, or Ted can, because he had one of the proposals there. Just on the Thorpe Acre proposal, it's £6,500. I think Councillor Max Hunt, County Councillor Max Hunt, circulated something to all the councillors on the area committee late last night or earlier this morning. I can't remember exact timings. And Jenny did, Councillor Jenny Baker did reply to him, which was nice of her. I think Mary's right, Councillor Draycott's right, that this proposal wouldn't get off the ground this financial year coming that we're considering. But that's 6.5 and 6.5. Can I ask officers, is that 13,000 from the last 2 years sitting in a bank account somewhere unspent? Because obviously we haven't spent it on Thorpe Acre, and we've put it to one side. Is that, Julie, I saw you shaking your head, is that correct? Am I correct? Or where's that money gone then, if it's not there?
Adjustments.
Yeah.
I wasn't shaking my head, I was just itching it, Jules. So but I think the figure is round about that and hasn't been used as yet.
Leslie's got a hand up. We're going to answer that, Leslie.
Yes, certainly. If I can just answer that. As you've heard in the introduction, there was an overall and net £10,000 overspend last year. So even though that was that's been included in the budgets, in totality, there are some ups and there are some downs each year, which we obviously try and balance off and keep that balance maintained. So the fact that we have budgeted and we have made it available every year to spend, it's actually been netted down against other overspends. So that budget's no longer available. We were looking at a year-on-year budget situation, and then obviously the net position gets carried forward, and we have to use that as the basis to balance this budget off.
Thank you very much. So we are looking at for next year, we're looking at 6,500 for the Thorpe Acre Hub, which most of us probably acknowledge is not going to be spent on that next year, and £7,000 potentially savings on lighting. So 13,500 that we're proposing could be spent on keeping the Biggin Street toilets open and providing some additional bus shelters. So do I have a seconder for that proposal?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you.
Move to a vote, Chair. I can see a blue hand from Councillor Draycott, a blue hand from Matt Bradford, and Sylvia Wright has also got her hand raised to speak.
Right, thank you. I'll take Councillor Draycott first then.
No, sorry, Chair, didn't lower it.
All right, okay. And Matt Bradford, you wanted to speak, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Just some information on bush shelters that may help members in their deliberations, really. I think a lot of the bush shelters in Loughborough were installed when the County Council delegated some of their highways responsibilities to us. Hence why they're provided, and now it's very much seen as a County Council responsibility. The installation of bush shelters, and Leslie might be able to provide some more information on this, is probably a capital item rather than a revenue one. I'm not sure how we'd sit with that, with funding that from revenue. And installing the shelters, I appreciate we're making some savings with Thorpe Acre and Festive Lights, but they do create an ongoing liability for us in terms of cleaning, maintenance and insurance. So once those bush shelters were to be installed, if that's what members were inclined to recommend, once they're installed, the costs don't go away. There is an ongoing liability that you would be required to meet for those. So I just thought I'd make you aware of that as part of your discussions, and you can consider that in your deliberations.
Thank you, Matt. Very helpful. I'll come to Sylvia in a second, but I think listening to Matt, then if we're going to make these proposals, I suggest that we take them separately, because the Biggin Street toilet one, to my mind, is much more straightforward, and we've identified savings that could be used to keep those toilets open, and therefore I suggest we take them as two separate items so that we don't lose the one because we lose the other. So Sylvia, you wanted to come back, I think.
Apologies. Sylvia Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture. Just wanted clarity on the 7,000 saving. I think the 7,000 additional is to do with staff time. It's not to do with saying that we're spending 7,000 on lights. If I'm reading Councillor Parton's inquiry correctly, because on point 19 of the festive decks and illuminations, the additional spend relates to officer time. It doesn't relate to more lights. We're not increasing the lights in that. I think also, as I said earlier, the actual contract, just to give members an informed position, we contractually, we have a contract in place for putting the lights up and the lights down. We can't change that figure. That's what contractually we actually pay. We will be going out to tender next year, but at this point in time, I can't guarantee whether that cost would go up or down. It all depends on the market. And in the festive light budget, it also includes the Diwali lights and putting those up and down, and the Diwali celebrations. And it also includes the light maintenance. So I just wanted to make sure you had all those facts to hand in helping inform your decision. And the other point that I think I should actually raise is that the actual Biggin Street toilets, the budget proposal, the cost, the saving within the proposed budget is a saving of 20,000, which is the closure of the Biggin Street toilets, not the 4,500. That's just for the Friday. The cost that the Loughborough special rates put to opening the toilets on the Friday.
That wasn't made clear, was it?
No. Well, thanks very much, Sylvia, for throwing a spanner in the works, but thank you anyway. Right, so where do we go from
further down with
Councillor Mear, you
Councillor Eckert, thank you for helping. I think the proposal to keep the toilets open should go ahead, and I'll come to some wordings in a moment. But my observation is that we can't be spending in the public's eye £2.6 million on the Bedford Square area in one breath, and in the next breath say actually we're going to be closing a toilet in the town centre. To save, in essence, £20,000. But if you look at this document here, 4,500, that's the only public document that the public can see. It just wouldn't wash, I think. I don't know if many have seen the comments on the thread on Facebook about Bedford Square. I'd urge you to go and have a look at it. Opinion is divided on that development, but that's a separate argument. But I think personally, I would say that we move that the savings on the lights, as Councillor Ted Parton has put forward, but also at this moment in time, the 6,500 from the huts that we've saved. But also, if we need to find the money, then obviously and revisit that huge £700,000 plus that we spend on the parks and the sports ground to try and keep the Biggin Street toilets open. Because at the end of the day, we don't ask for much. We didn't know that the money that wasn't in the hut was disappearing. We thought it could be there to be tapped into, but it's not there. So we need to make savings elsewhere. And if that's what we're recommending, because we're a consultative group for Cabinet and Council to look at and decide, I think that's the way to go. So, Councillor Draycott, if you'd allow me to readjust your a little bit, your proposal is that we keep the Biggin Street toilets open to be funded from an underspend in the community set hubs of £6,500 for this year, and we can reinstate it next year and look at the toilets again, and also look at underspends in sports grounds and parks in the coming year.
So just to clarify, are we looking at the toilets remaining open full time as they were, or just the Friday afternoon?
I think it's the 3 days, the Thursday, Friday.
3 day, yeah. Yeah, I'm pleased with that amendment, Chair.
Right, so Councillor Draycott's proposed that. Are you still willing to second it, Ted, just based on the toilets now? And we'll come back to the bus shelters later.
Yeah, I'll second that, Chair.
Right, okay, so we now need to take a vote.
Would you like me to do a named vote, Chair, and run through everybody?
Do we need to do that, or can we just ask for dissent?
You can ask if there's anybody who wishes to vote against or abstain, Chair.
Yeah, that's what I would prefer to do, if we can do it that way.
Chair.
So if anybody...
Chair, sorry, as a member of Cabinet, I'll need to abstain on this.
Okay, anybody else?
And that applies to me as well, Jenny.
Right, so Councillor Mercer and Councillor Morgan are abstaining. Is everybody else in support? So raise your hand if that's not the case. If that is, yes, all right. If that is the case, raise your hand if you're supporting that.
If we're supporting it, yeah.
Yeah. People doing that. I'm not clear whether some people are raising their.
It might be worth a roll call, Chair.
I think, yes, I think let's do the roll call. It's just.
Or do blue hands. Blue hands.
Oh, we could do it with blue hands, couldn't we? Raise your blue hand if you support the proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems to be going up and down.
That's the problem with blue hands, Chair. It's probably easier to take a roll call.
Right, let's take a roll call. Okay.
So when I call your name out, if you could say for, against or abstain on that proposal, please. Councillor Baldwin.
For, Chair.
Councillor Bolton.
In favour, thank you.
Councillor Bradshaw.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Draycott.
For.
Councillor Forrest.
For.
Councillor Hamilton.
For.
Councillor Christine Harris. Is Councillor Christine Harris still with us?
Yes, yes.
She's for.
Yeah, I said yes for. I'm sorry.
I think Councillor Keith Harris has joined us now. So do you want to?
I'm for.
Councillor Goddard.
For.
Councillor Mercer.
Abstaining as a member of Cabinet.
Councillor Mia.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
Abstaining.
Councillor Parsons.
Abstaining.
Councillor Parton.
For.
Councillor Tillotson.
Yeah, for.
And Councillor Ward.
For.
So that's carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, on the issue of the bus shelters, I think what's clear is much as we'd like them, we don't have the money for them. But can we put this forward as something that we would like to see in the future, consideration given to more bush shelters, rather than doing it in a formal way when we know there is realistically no likelihood of it happening?
You could. Oh, Councillor Meir is waving.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Meir.
Yeah, I just wanted to come in there on something just to ask Matt, really, because obviously bush shelters afford advertising space to advertisers. And is that something that we could ask Matt to explore going forward? Because obviously Julie's brought up a very important issue, bus shelters. Those streets are just in her area, and there's other areas that all councillors could look at and point to. But I was just thinking, is there something that we could actually get somebody in to come and install these bus shelters, and it's all paid for by advertising, for example, because now bus shelters aren't just paper adverts, they're all digital, and so very lucrative. So is that something that Matthew, we can ask Matt to explore going forward, and maybe come back with a report, and that's something then we then take forward as a committee?
If I could come back to that question, Chair. It's the advertising market for bush shelters is very strong at the moment. In fact, we inherited about 8 bush shelters from an advertising company recently that were withdrawing from the paper advertising market, bush shelters. And I think the advertising revenue that you can generate for a bush shelter now probably wouldn't cover the installation of new ones. It is something that we can have a look at and we can explore. But I think the opportunities probably lie more within advertising within our existing bush shelters that we've got, rather than having advertising pay for the cost of installation for new ones, because I just don't think the advertising market there is as strong as it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago. But we'll look into it.
Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes,
Councillor Draycott.
Yes, in view of what information we've been given, and based on the need, I think we should ask officers to go away, take on board what has been spoken about tonight and the need certainly by Councillor Bradshaw, and see what package can be put together. Because if you take the community hubs and the festive decks money, there is still some money there that could be used for something else. And I think, as Councillor Meir has said, there's advertising that can be gained and what have you. The slippage on the capital programme, maybe a package could be put together to start, like, a small pot of money. If parish and town councils can purchase their own bush shelters, then I think Loughborough should be looking at doing the same and not losing out. So based on what's been said tonight, I'd like to propose that officers go away, check everything out and see if it's feasible and what can be arranged. And we don't wait till the next meeting, which will be the summer next year, but an email be circulated. And obviously, of course, if it can work and it can be funded, then we would want to start, and maybe yourself as chair would be the point of call that officers speak to about the matter and take it forward.
Sorry, Chair, I am going to have to interrupt at that point. This committee is a consultative committee. It can't commission officers to do anything on its behalf, so it would have to be a recommendation to Cabinet, for Cabinet to ask officers to do that piece of work, Chair.
Well, if that can be a recommendation from this committee to Cabinet, then that's perfectly fine. That, because they'll only hand it back to the officers anyhow, so it's the same course sort of thing. So a recommendation then to Cabinet that this matter be looked into based on the discussion at this meeting.
Yes, I support that, and I think also, taking what Adrian's just said, I feel I would like this committee to ask Cabinet to allow this committee to ask officers for reports. We only meet twice a year, and I think it wouldn't be unreasonable that we are able to ask officers to produce reports on issues of relevance and importance to Loughborough.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, yes.
Chair, sorry to interrupt again. That would have to be a recommendation to full council, because the powers of this committee are set out by full council, not by cabinet. So they only amended the powers of the committee in the summer.
I think there's a constitutional review on at the moment, isn't it? So we'll be able to get something into that, Chair.
Yes. So that's the way we need to do it. So
we'll have some more blue hands waiting as well, Chair.
All right, okay. Let's have a look. I can't see them. Oh yes. I'm not sure who was first. Simon, do you want to say what you've got to say?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, really. One is actually on the bus shelter. So it was a few years ago now, but we did actually have quite an extensive look at bus shelter advertising at that time. And one of the issues we had is, although it appeared quite an attractive proposition, when we look to sell them, the people who buy advertising are looking to buy a number of sites. So, you know, across a sort of regional or national basis. So actually trying to sell a relatively few sites just within Loughborough isn't actually a very attractive proposition. So that's just that's something that Matt's predecessor actually had a look at a few years ago. So I'm just observe that. And then it is quite difficult conceptually, but I have to say that any additional expenditure that we would add to the Loughborough special expenses actually adds directly to the 1.4 million that we're proposing that we use from reserves with this budget. So any additional expenditure would add to that projected use of reserves. There is no spare money actually within the budgets. There's some ups and downs, and we can see that within how the money flows through. But any additional expenditure that is proposed and agreed, however that mechanism happens, is actually adding to the deficit. There aren't pots of money within the Loughborough special expenses that can be used that have been banked. It's all encompassed within the 1.4 million use of reserves within the overall draft budget. So it is difficult to understand that because of the way the presentation works and the way the Loughborough special works, which is quite technical, but that is the case.
Thank you for that clarification, Simon. Ted, you raise your hand.
Yeah, thank you. There is a spare bus shelter that was taken down on Southfield Road. Matt, do we still have that, and could we commission that somewhere else?
Come back through you, Chair. No, we don't still have that one. That was taken out by the advertising company that owned it. It was one that we had decommissioned because the bus route no longer goes down Southfields Road. So that was taken out, and the pavement was reinstated, and that was done at the point where the rest of the bus shelters were transferred to the Borough Council that were in the ownership of that advertising company.
All right, thank you. Right, I think we've probably reached the end of this now, unless I've missed anything. Has anybody else got anything else they wish to say before we move on? No? Right, okay. So the next item is just the dates of the next meeting, unless I've missed something. Have I missed something, Adrian?
Where did we get with that proposal? We haven't, it wasn't seconded and it wasn't.
Oh, right, sorry, yeah. Right, so we need, the proposal was that we ask Cabinet to, remind me, Adrian, we asked Cabinet.
Can I suggest that the proposal is something like that the Loughborough Area Committee requests that Cabinet ask officers to investigate the possibility of installing additional bus shelters within the town of Loughborough. And I think also there was a proposal that the committee wishes to feed into the ongoing review of the Constitution, that it be allowed to commission officers to undertake work on its behalf.
So are you saying?
I propose the bus shelters, Adrian.
Sorry?
I said you split that into two, so I'll propose the first one about the bus shelters if somebody would be kind enough to second.
I think they both go together, Chair. So
Yeah.
I would move. Yeah.
Yeah, above. Do we need to take a vote on this then, Adrian?
Yeah,
Is that what you're suggesting?
Is somebody
Yeah.
going to second it, Chair?
Right,
If
okay.
nobody's seconded, Chair, I'd be happy to second that proposal.
Right, thank you. So Julie's proposed it and Sandy's seconded it. Right, so let's just go to a roll call vote, please, rather than.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Baldwin.
I'm for, Chair.
Councillor Bolton.
4.
Councillor Bradshaw.
4.
Councillor Brennan.
I'm for, Chair.
Councillor Draycott.
4.
Councillor Forrest.
4.
Councillor Hamilton.
4.
Councillor Christine Harris.
4.
Was that 4? Sorry.
Yes. 4.
Yep. Councillor Keith Harris.
4.
Councillor Goddard.
4.
Councillor Mercer.
Abstain.
Councillor Mia.
4.
Councillor Morgan.
Abstain.
Councillor Parsons.
I abstain.
Councillor Parton.
4.
Councillor Tillotson.
4.
And Councillor Ward.
4.
So that is carried, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, so that's the end of the business, other than to note the dates of future meetings, which you can see on your paper, 16th of June and 15th of December 2021. So thank you all for your attendance, and
Very much.
sorry, Councillor Mia, were you going to say something?
Just say thank you very much as well. That's all.
All right, thank you. Yes, have a safe and happy Christmas, everyone. Thank you very much.
And to you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Chair. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.